Hello guys, today I want to try to tell you about one of the most difficult and violent periods in the history of Russia and the city of St. Petersburg in particular, formerly Leningrad. And this is also one of the key moments in the history of the Second World War, at least for Russia and the Russian people. Okay, let's get started. In 1941, Nazi forces surrounded the city of Leningrad, cutting off all supplies and trapping over 2 million people inside. What followed was one of the most brutal sieges in history, lasting for 872 days and resulting in the death of over 1 million people. But despite the odds against them, the people of Leningrad refused to give up. They showed incredible resilience, resourcefulness, and heroism in the face of unimaginable hardship. Leningrad was a city of great importance for the Soviet Union, not only because of its strategic location, but also because of its cultural significance. It was the cradle of the Bolshevik Revolution, the birthplace of the Soviet state, and the center of artistic and intellectual activity. On December 18, 1940, Hitler signed Directive Number 21, known as the Barbarossa Plan. This plan provided for an attack on the Soviet Union by 3 army groups in 3 main directions: Army Group North on Leningrad, Army Group Center on Moscow, and Army Group South on Kiev. The capture of Moscow was supposed to be carried out only after the capture of Leningrad and Kronstadt. Leningrad was the second most important city in the USSR, with a population of about 3.2 million people. It provided the country with almost a quarter of the total production of heavy machinery and a third of the products of the electrical industry. It had 333 large industrial enterprises employing 565,000 people, as well as a large number of factories and factories of local industry. The scientific and technical potential of Leningrad was very high. With the capture of Leningrad, the German command could solve a number of important problems, namely, to seize the powerful economic base of the Soviet Union, which before the war provided about 12% of the total industrial production of the Soviet Union, capture or destroy the Baltic Navy, as well as a huge merchant fleet, secure the left flank of Army Group Center, which was carrying out the offensive on Moscow, and release large forces of Army Group North from the north, strengthen its dominance in the Baltic Sea and ensure the supply of ore from Norwegian ports for German industry. According to many sources, Hitler set strict deadlines for the capture of the city, and in case of prolonged resistance, Leningrad should be wiped off the face of the earth, and its population destroyed by bombing and starvation. The German troops were clearly instructed that if civilians tried to leave the city fleeing from hunger, they should be shot. For 872 days, the inhabitants of Leningrad were subjected to a brutal blockade by the Nazis. In literature and on monuments, there is around 900 days and nights. The blockade cut off all supplies to the city, including food and fuel, leaving the townspeople to fend for themselves in the harsh winter. The situation was terrible and people were forced to limit their food intake, with some eating only 125 grams of bread a day. Many ate everything they could find, including rats, pigeons, dogs, and even glue. In the winter of 1941-1942, the number of children who lost their parents began to increase every day as mortality from exhaustion increased. Mother and grandmother gave their bread rations to the kids and died of exhaustion. There was no electricity, and hungry, exhausted people went to the Neva River for water, falling and dying on the way. The corpses were no longer cleaned, they were simply covered with snow. People died at home, whole families, whole apartments. All the food for a working man consisted of 250 grams of bread, baked in half with wood and other impurities, and therefore heavy and so small. Everyone else, including children, received 125 grams of this bread. Lack of fuel meant lack of heat, and the townspeople had to look for ways to keep warm at low temperatures, which sometimes dropped to minus 40 degrees Celsius. They huddled in their small apartments, wrapped in clothes and blankets, but even that wasn't enough, and many died from hypothermia or other illnesses caused by harsh conditions. Despite the unfavorable circumstances, the Leningraders did not give up. They used their ingenuity and resourcefulness to survive. They built homemade stoves out of bricks and used the heat from incandescent lamps to heat their homes. They have also found ways to grow vegetables and raise livestock on small plots of land or even on their balconies. Not only Leningraders fought in the blockade, the Soviet military defended the city from the Nazis by launching counterattacks and breaking through the blockade to deliver supplies. The soldiers defending Leningrad were often young and inexperienced, but they fought bravely and decisively. The blockade also forced the Leningraders to confront their own humanity. They faced the most difficult moral dilemmas, deciding who to help and who to leave behind. Some stole from their neighbors to survive, while others gave their last piece of bread to a stranger. Many people have risked their own lives to help others, often paying the highest price. The Siege of Leningrad was a time of unimaginable suffering, but also a time of incredible human resilience and solidarity. It brought out the best and the worst in people, and showed that even in the darkest times, humanity can find a way to survive. The Siege of Leningrad gave birth to many heroes, both ordinary citizens and soldiers. Among them was a young girl named Tanya Savicheva, who kept a diary about her experiences during the blockade. In her diary, Tanya wrote down the names and ages of her family members who died of hunger or illness. She herself died at the age of 14, but her diary has been preserved as a convenience evidence of the sufferings of the Leningraders. Another hero was Olga Bergolets, a poet and radio presenter who became the voice of hope and inspiration for Leningrad residents. Her poems and radio broadcasts lifted the spirits of the townspeople, reminding them of their strength and fortitude. There were also countless acts of heroism on the part of ordinary citizens, such as workers who continued to run the city's factories despite a shortage of supplies, or volunteers who risked their lives to rescue people trapped in bombed buildings. The military defenders of Leningrad were also heroes in their own right. One of the most famous examples is the history of the 58th Guards Rifle Division, which was tasked with defending the Nevsky Sport bridgehead. The division was surrounded by German troops and cut off from supplies, but they held their positions for 900 days. Despite heavy losses, the division was eventually replaced by Soviet troops in January 1944. The siege of Leningrad was completely lifted during the Leningrad-Novgorod operation in 1944. As a result of the powerful offensive of the Soviet troops. German troops were pushed back from Leningrad at a distance of 60 to 100 km. January 27, 1944 was the day of the complete liberation of Leningrad from the blockade. On this day, a festive salute was given in Leningrad. The Siege of Leningrad had a profound impact on the residents of the city, the Soviet Union and the whole world. He became a symbol of human fortitude and resilience, inspiring people to continue the fight against fascism and tyranny. The blockade also had an indelible impact on the culture and identity of Leningrad, which was renamed St. Petersburg in 1991. The museums and memorials of the city serve as a powerful reminder of the sacrifices made by its inhabitants during the siege. In conclusion, I would like to say that the Siege of Leningrad became a defining moment in the history of the Second World War, and a testament to the human spirit. It showed that even in the darkest times, people can find the strength to endure and fight for what is right. The heroes of Leningrad, known and unknown, are a source of inspiration for everyone who faces difficulties and hardships. Their legacy lives on, reminding us of the power of human resilience and solidarity. We must remember the lessons of the Siege of Leningrad and work to ensure that such atrocities never happen again. We must strive for peace and work to build a world in which people will not have to suffer from the horrors of war and hunger. Thank you for watching this video about the Siege of Leningrad. I hope you found this informative and thought-provoking. Please take a moment to reflect on the sacrifices made by the residents of Leningrad and the heroes who fought to defend the city. Okay, thank you for your attention and goodbye.